Dr. Elara Voss had always been fascinated by the symphony of the human mind, a complex orchestra of neurons firing in rhythm, producing the thoughts, feelings, and dreams that made us human. Her life's work as a neuroscientist revolved around deciphering these enigmatic harmonies. But she never anticipated the melody she would stumble upon in her quiet laboratory late one evening. The lab was bathed in the soft golden glow of overhead lights. A faint hum from the array of machines accompanied her as she adjusted the dials of her experimental frequency generator. The setup was simple but revolutionary. Elara was testing the impact of specific sound waves on neural pathways, hoping to create a non-invasive treatment for anxiety. Her test subject, Kian, a young artist with piercing green eyes and a penchant for vivid, surreal paintings, sat reclined in the adjacent room. Electrodes gently adhered to his temples monitored his brain activity, producing a steady stream of data on her screen. "Ready, Kian?" she asked through the intercom, her voice steady but tinged with excitement. "As ready as I'll ever be, Doc," Kian replied with a nervous chuckle. Elara initiated the sequence, and a low, undulating tone filled the air, a sound designed to mimic the natural frequencies of the brain. At first, everything proceeded as expected. Kian's brainwaves adjusted slightly, calming into a more cohesive rhythm. But then, as she fine-tuned the frequency, an unexpected resonance occurred. The graphs on her screen spiked erratically, and before she could react, a sharp jolt coursed through her own mind. Elara gasped, clutching the edge of the desk as her vision blurred. Colours exploded in her mind, vivid reds, blues and greens swirling like an artist's palette come alive. Emotions she couldn't identify crashed over her: elation, despair, curiosity. Fragmented images followed: a beach at sunset, a cluttered art studio, the delicate stroke of a paintbrush on canvas. They weren't hers, they were Kian's. She tore off her headset, the connection breaking abruptly. Across the intercom, Kian's voice came through, trembling. "Dr. Voss, are you okay?" I felt something. Elara sat in stunned silence, her pulse racing. She had heard his thoughts, or perhaps more accurately experienced them. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. She had discovered a way to communicate directly with the human brain, bypassing language entirely. But at what cost? Over the following days, Elara couldn't shake the vivid impressions of Kian's thoughts. It wasn't just the memories. It was as if parts of his essence lingered within her. She began to notice subtle changes in herself, an unfamiliar urge to sketch, a sudden love for jazz music she'd never cared for before. Even her dreams were no longer her own. They were filled with the chaotic beauty of Kian's imagination. Determined to understand what was happening, Elara called Kian back for further testing. This time she equipped herself with every safeguard she could devise. "Kian, I think I've stumbled onto something extraordinary," she explained, her voice a mix of awe and apprehension. "But it's affecting us both. I need your help to figure this out." Kian hesitated, then nodded. "I trust you, Doc. Let's do it." The second experiment was even more intense. As the frequencies aligned, Elara felt the connections snap into place with startling clarity. It wasn't just a cascade of sensations this time. It was a dialogue, a merging of minds. She could feel Kian's awe as he realized she was there with him, sharing his thoughts. Together, they explored the connection, pushing its limits. But as they delved deeper, the boundaries between them began to blur. Elara found herself questioning where her thoughts ended and his began. Memories of her childhood mingled with Kian's recollections of growing up in a small coastal town. She experienced his heartbreak, his triumphs, his doubts, all as vividly as if they were her own. And Kian, too, seemed to absorb pieces of her. He spoke with uncanny insight about her late mother, a topic she had never shared with him. The experiments grew increasingly perilous. Elara's colleagues began to notice changes in her demeanour, an uncharacteristic impulsiveness, bursts of creativity that seemed alien to the meticulous scientist they knew. And then there was Kian, whose once erratic behaviour had stabilised, but at the cost of losing pieces of himself. His paintings, once chaotic and raw, became hauntingly serene, echoing themes from Elara's own life. One night, as she sat alone in the lab, Elara stared at a canvas Kian had left behind. It depicted two figures standing on the edge of a shimmering void, their forms entwined in a way that made it impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. The painting was beautiful, but it filled her with a deep unease. She realized the connection wasn't just a tool for understanding. It was a fusion, a surrender of individuality. If she continued, there might come a point where she and Kian would no longer be separate entities, but something entirely new. The thought chilled her. As the weeks passed, Alara wrestled with the ethical implications of her discovery. Was it worth the risk to continue? Could the technology be refined to avoid the unintended side effects? And most importantly, who would she become if she couldn't undo the merging of their minds? For now, she could only hope the answers lay within the strange resonating frequencies that had already changed her life and Kian's forever.